So what is the ideal landscape then? So let's imagine you could get whatever it is that you want, right? Resources are not an issue. What is the landscape that we need in South Africa in order to look? We all agreed we're not going to meet our goals by 2030. So let's extend the goal for us to perhaps later, 2050, right? What do we need in place in order for this sector that you're all playing in to do what it's supposed to do?
I mean, I do think that one of the shifts that needs to happen is that higher education isn't for everybody. It shouldn't be for everybody. It has a particular purpose. Stop trying to make it something that it can't be.
Yeah.
It comes back to what we started with the question around TVET. Like, understand that there are different purposes, there are different functions for things. And instead of us trying to make this one thing the all-encompassing thing, let's see it for what it actually is. And I think recognize that part of what higher education contributes to society, like this is what Rian was alluding to, is that it helps to orientate people's thinking. That's what it should do when it's at its best, right? It's about developing a set of skills that are related to the discipline in which they're being played out, but are actually have value beyond the discipline. I have a PhD in New Testament studies. Cool. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing in my job.
Yep.
And yet it does, because it's taught me skills of paying attention to detail, reading texts, making sense of those texts, and then asking a different set of questions. I wouldn't be able to ask those questions without that. So it has a value, but to reduce its value to being something primarily that is about the specific job that I have to get, I mean, by all accounts, I should consider myself an absolute failure. I'm not in the field that I'm thoroughly trained in, but I'm not. I'm a success because it's given me the tools and the mindset that enables me to go, I can see the connection here. I can make those alignments. And suddenly the world opens up, right? Do I still need a set of skills that I can acquire through certification? Absolutely, because I can't keep up with what's going on in the world. So a system that values those equally is what we should be aiming for, and not funneling everybody into higher education.
I think I agree, and I think one of the key things is to reduce the pressure on the numbers in terms of access and increase the support that we provide to those then in the system. So, and I think that needs money. And if you're saying education is free and it's for everybody and it's first come, first serve, and there's all these spaces, I think you're kind of missing the point, number one. Number two, one of the wealthiest people I know is a plumber. And there's real value in saying, and I have a lot of respect for him for saying, could have done engineering. Actually, he made the requirements, but his dad was a plumber and he wanted to be a plumber, and he runs a very successful business. Okay, so yes, he needed the business skills, etc., which I probably wouldn't have had. But the difference between him and me is I need an employer. He doesn't.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So we've lost that. We've lost that kind of, and I think we actually, ironically, perversely are disempowering our scholars leaving school rather than actually, we're saying you are nothing if you've got a degree.
It's actually quite interesting because we forget that in the Constitution you have a right to basic education, not higher education. And we're treating that.
And I made controversial statement.
It says so. And for me, I read that to mean up until grade 9.
Yeah, that is correct.
And anything beyond that is and should be read as a privilege, quite frankly. And you determine what that privilege is and how you. And I'm not saying we should now ban access to education, not at all. But speaking to both your points, we are seeing now and treating higher education as if it's a space that people are actually constitutionally.
And I'll tell you something
entitled to.
interesting. This funding of education to public students means that in many instances in the private sector, you're getting the students who are doing what they want to do. In a lot of cases in the public system, students are doing whatever they can. And that's a huge problem.
I think the first thing that we need to do going forward is we need to understand what the differentiated PSET system is. The post-school education and training system. Everything is not everything to everyone. So we've all got our spaces. And I think those spaces should be, in my view, should be identified, and we must define what we want out of each of them. What's the outcome? What value are they going to contribute? And I think then we need to look at the role and function, the size and shape of each of the players in the PSET system, and they need to be given the credibility that they deserve. Absolutely. Instead of walking around saying to every child, university is the end game only. Yeah. So if we can actually do that, I think it would be a big win in understanding what higher education, the bigger, where higher education fits into it, and who should have access, who must enter it. Basic education, yes, that was the right in 1994. But there was a progressive realization of the right towards higher education as well. That was not an absolute right, unlike basic education. But what's it, 27? What are we? 30 years later. I would have liked to have seen that realization being a little more effective, delivering value, as opposed to us still saying to people, you don't have an absolute right to higher education. No, they don't have the right now because we've made it a free-for-all. We should be defining the space correctly and appropriately.
What I want is a smaller, significantly smaller number of students who are registering at universities because they claim it a right, who will then not finish their degrees, regardless of how much additional time you have. And the reality is, if we're a little bit more selective about who we allow access to, with a clearly defined, clearly democratic process, we would be producing more graduates with a better quality of comprehension, understanding, and therefore ultimately application of the theory that they've learned.
Can't agree with you more. And doesn't it come back to who's entering higher education? Everybody. Because we haven't defined what the TVET college is all about.